So let's get started with our agenda. So we're going to first do a little bit of a poll and ask you to sort of evaluate your current state of onboarding in the organization where you sit or maybe organizations that you serve. Then we're going to talk about, we're not doing the poll just yet. But it's okay. We're doing the agenda right now, but we're going to talk about integrating Cloverleaf into the first 30 days of employment. And then we are going to talk about what we suggest in week 1, weeks 2 to 3, and maybe in week 4. Then we're going to talk a little bit about micro-learning and how you want to encourage continued learning through the onboarding process and what that spectrum of micro-learning is. We want to hear from you. So we are going to ask people to share some of their best practices that maybe they do in onboarding, whether that's integrating Cloverleaf or not. We also will tell you the special topic we are doing for our February webinar. Many of you have been asking for some best practices or train the trainer activities to get more people engaged in Cloverleaf. So we're going to be tackling that in February. We'll give you the opportunity to register for that. And then we will have some questions and feedback. But first, let's go to that poll, which you should see on a scale of 1 to 6. I purposely did not do 1 to 5 because most people will answer 3. 6 being excellent and 1 being poor. How would you rate your organization's current onboarding experience? So how would you rate your organization's current onboarding experience? Okay, so you can end that, Jason. So you can share the results as well. So we've got a solid almost half of you in that 4 range, a few more of you in about 20% in that above 4 range, and then another 33% in that below 4 range. So I'll ask this question, and if you would like to speak, you can raise your hand. You can click the raise your hand function. If you want to share in the chat, you can do this. So for those of you who answered 4 or above, right? What's the single most important thing that you feel makes your onboarding process effective? What do you think is that one thing that really makes it effective? So if you want to speak, you can raise your hand and we'll ask you to unmute, or you can just type in the chat. So if you answered 4, 5, or 6, what do you think is that single biggest thing that makes it effective? What's driving it? What's causing it to be effective? The customer services and resources that we have lined out, right? So we have these resources, we have some kind of plan, we have a roadmap. Stacy also shared a plan, right? Over communication with the plan, right? We drive the plan home, having a plan, first day itinerary in place starting on day 1. So there is that itinerary, that roadmap, right? Excellent. A plan that includes opportunities for connection, right? Learning about the business, right? So it's not just, here's your job. It sounds like there's some connection, some relationship building, some orienting the person with the organization that takes place. Okay, good. So for those of you who answered, the group of you that answered 2 or 3, what do you think is the biggest missing, right now in your onboarding? It might be the same answers. What's the biggest missing right now? What do you think is the biggest area of improvement? So if you want to, again, if you want to speak, you can raise your hand, or you can also share in the chat. If you answered that 2 or 3, what did you think is the biggest missing right now? And as we're waiting for any of those responses, I'll share what I recently, in August, ended time. I was leading a global team of 12 individuals for almost 3 years. And when I first came in, I asked to see what's the onboarding process for this team? And the person who was sort of the admin for the team gave me this email. And I said, okay, great. I got that email. I said, what else? Oh, that's it. That's the email that explains it. I'm like, there's one email. The onboarding process was one email. So needless to say, the first thing I did was go to work at putting together that plan. Jacqueline showed missing a plan. We currently leave it solely up to the hiring managers. And the thing is, like, hiring managers are usually great at managing their department, but they're not necessarily learning leaders or talent leaders that an onboarding process, right, is their field of expertise, right? Also, someone shared a roadmap, several systems that are not intertwined, right? Having all of that put together. The one thing I will say that I found very helpful in the process that I did design for that, the email was the process team, was I literally put it week by week, what the person should, what are the activities that it's critical to do that involve onboarding for that individual. And the person, I did have a person that was accountable on my team for onboarding, right? So I had a person that was walking through new members of the team, almost like an onboarding buddy. And they were compensated for that, right? So we weren't an organization that was big enough to have a talent department. It was a smaller business. So I had a person that was accountable for that. And I had a week by week, these are the things that you should be accomplishing each week. And they had a call with that sort of onboarding buddy every Friday to ask questions, get things clarified. There were training videos, obviously, they were watching each week. And they really had a solid 6 or 7 week sort of spreadsheet. They were able to check off their own progress as well. Cole shared processes in place for some roles. They're not consistent through the organization. It lacks buy-in from all departments. Yes, there might be solid onboarding processes for certain roles in the organization. And as roles get added, it's like, well, how do we onboard this person? What do we do here, right? So that process and that plan obviously is critical. Today, what we're going to focus a little bit on is a little bit more of the relationship building part of it, because obviously Cloverleaf is going to thrive in this area of helping people get connected to people on their team, especially if the team is either hybrid, dispersed, or remote. So this is a little fun fact just around onboarding, right? So this is from Gallup, right? 70% of employees who've had exceptional onboarding experiences say they have the best possible job. These employees are also 2.6 times as likely to be extremely satisfied with their workplace and far more likely to stay, right? So some of you may remember a very old commercial. It's an old commercial. I will definitely date myself with my Gen X self here, but there was a commercial that came out probably in the 80s, and it was, "You never have a second chance to make a first impression." Now, the commercial was for deodorant, right? But it's really true. You do not have a second chance to create that first impression of that experience with the organization. You only have one shot, right? You have that one shot of that first 30, 60, 90 days. And it's critical that people have some kind of guidance here. Now, again, Cloverleaf can assist with some of the relationship building aspect of it. If there's other support around building process, right? Even if you literally just start with a step-by-step spreadsheet of this is what should be happening in week 1, 2, 3, 4, that can be a game changer if the process piece is missing. So if you're just joining us, Jason, if you would just pop into the chat, I'm going to be walking through how you can integrate Cloverleaf starting with week 1. But we're going to be right in here. So everything I'm sharing is actually going to be in more detail in the resource. So if you want to follow along there, you can do that as well. That'll all be sort of where we kind of go in week 1. Okay. So week 1, so the first thing that you want to do, the purpose of week 1 is the focus on self-awareness, right? So you may have people coming into your organization that may or may not have any kind of self-development training, leadership training. If they're newer to the workforce, this may be foreign to them, right? What Cloverleaf is or how they should use it might be foreign to them. So the focus of the person coming into the organization within week 1 in terms of integrating Cloverleaf is self-awareness, right? So you also have to determine who will be guiding this process. For example, is it the direct manager? If it's the direct manager who's going to be guiding the onboarding process, those people need a process and they need training on that process. Is someone from talent or HR going to own that, right? So everything I'm sharing, right, the responsibility, it depends on who's owning the onboarding process. Again, is it from someone in talent or HR, or is it the direct manager? And if it is, they need a roadmap too, right? You can't just be like, okay, onboard this person, right? There may be functional parts of the role that the manager can decide how to lay out, but there are aspects of the person getting acclimated to the organization that usually aren't the field of expertise of the manager. That's what people in talent do. They help people to learn, grow, develop, acclimate, and become integrated onto teams. So you want to assign the assessments, and you may want to tell them, hey, you don't have to do every assessment all at once. You can let people know, hey, you can do one assessment a day if you want the first week or whatever it is, right? You assign the assessment, you make sure they know how to get in, you make sure they just understand what Cloverleaf is. You want to also explain how Cloverleaf is different. Many people coming to you, if they've had a job before, and even if they've hadn't, sometimes people in college do take personality assessments. The experience of assessments that they've had is, I take an assessment, I get a report, maybe I go to a workshop, and I never talk about it again. So you want to explain to them how Cloverleaf actually takes this assessment data and then feeds you insights and ways that you can actually communicate and plan and proactively plan creative communication or customized communication with members of your team. So you want to make sure that you explain how Cloverleaf is different. Oh, someone will say, oh, I already took DISC. I know about that. Here's the thing, and this is the analogy I'm going to give you if you need a buzzword to explain Cloverleaf. The assessments are just the gas that you put in the car. Cloverleaf's functionality is the shiny red Corvette. The assessments are just the gas. They're actually, even though that's a big part of it, the functionality of what it does with that information is what Cloverleaf's about. Right? So if someone said, I took DISC before, yes, I totally understand you may have taken DISC before. This is actually a different way to incorporate assessment data and make it actionable in your everyday, right? And so we want to help people understand how Cloverleaf is different. You want to walk people through my dashboard, right? So you want to be able to, you want to be able to have people understand that it's not just about getting the emails, right? Now, if you yourself are just getting the emails, you may be missing the gold of my dashboard. So you want to make sure that you also kind of let people know what's available here, right? So that they can integrate, if it's possible in your organization, that they can integrate their calendar, that they can understand how to plan to be in a meeting, especially if people that they don't even know, right? That are there, right? That they don't even know, some of those people, they might not ever meet those people. They might not ever be in the same room with those people, right? So you want to kind of walk through my dashboard. You want to also invite them to consider using their daily coaching, right? They're going to get that tip. And for those of you who haven't been sort of using this reflections tools, it just came out towards the end of next year. This is a great, quick self-development tool. They're going to get this tip about themselves. It's going to ask them a question, right? And I'm going to give an answer here. So I'm going to give a reflected answer. I don't have time to really think through it, right? But I just want to, they're going to give that answer, but they're also going to get a tip about themselves, right? How can I create a safe space for Andrew to share innovative ideas without fear of conflict, right? So maybe I can ask Andrew, right, to bring ideas to our next meeting. I have a meeting with Andrew right after this, right? So I can do that, right? So this is also helping them get to know not only themselves, but also how they can interact with other people. Someone might not know Andrew. They might have met Andrew for the first time. So they may not be able to answer that question. That's okay, right? They can finish that, but they can still learn something about Andrew, right? So we want to draw their attention to my dashboard. We also want to draw their attention to, after they take their assessments, they can ask some questions here. How can I, deliver critical feedback, right? Or how should I approach my manager, right? Right, approach, right? How should I approach many with questions, right? Right. Now I'm going to come and get some information here about how I can customize my own communication with Mindy. Right. And I can also get some insight into how some of the thinking styles, right, of the people on my team. Right. So it's all about kind of that self-awareness of how I can best communicate, customize, learn. Right. So you want to make sure in that week one that you help people log in. You help people understand that it's not just the email that might come through on your phone when you're half awake, that this is a system that you can actually log into and get value from. And if someone is brand new, a lot of times in week one of a job, you're bored. Okay. So you're like, what do I do? I don't know enough to do this. I don't know enough to do that. If you want someone to not be surfing the internet, have them start to sort of use Cloverleaf as a little bit of like, hey, how can I learn more about my team members? But you can also let people know, hey, when you have some downtime, go in here, ask the dashboard some questions, go look at your assessments, go look at, your team dashboard, which we'll go to in a second. Right. So again, this is a great thing for people to dive into in week one, especially when there's not a whole lot to do in week one. Right. So you want to make sure that you are walking through my dashboard. You're going through Insight Search, daily coaching, reflections, and save and share. I forgot that's one thing you also want to do. So with save and share, when you view your daily coaching, maybe if this is a tip that you're like, you know what, this would be a good tip for me to bring to my one-on-one with my new manager, right? And so I'm going to save that. And then maybe I want to share it. I can actually copy it and say, hey, this is something that it would be really interesting if we discussed, given what my role is. You can copy it and send it to your manager, or you can just save it and maybe bring it up into a meeting. When you go to your dashboard here, you're going to see your saved tips. So that tip I just saved is right here. You're also going to see my reflections, right? So here's my reflection about Andrew as well. So again, you just want to kind of walk them through this, because this is the gold mine. This is the value of Cloverleaf, right? This is really that place where I can go and learn, develop, ask questions, prepare, be super intentional about my meetings and communications. So you want to make sure, yes.
I'm sorry, we had a question
Sure.
that was DM'd to me.
Okay.
So when someone is coming onto the platform for the first time and we're trying to get them to take some of these assessments, the question I got was if somebody has previous like DISC results,
Mhm.
what's the benefit of them taking DISC on Cloverleaf over them just importing their old results?
So a couple of things. So for example, DISC was designed for teams in the workplace. And sometimes your function and your role on a team can actually influence your DISC results. So I would first want to know, did the person take DISC last month or 5 years ago? Right? If they took it a while ago, I would say take it again. Right? If they took it in the past 6 months and they recently, had you were on a team and they took it, great. But if it's been years ago, we do shift over time. And we do shift also in our experience within our role, right? So maybe this is the first time a person's becoming a people manager, right? And so I would definitely say, if it's been longer than 6 months, I would say take it again. And you're in a different environment, you're in a different team, you're in a different role, you're in a different organization. That's all going to impact your results. And so I would say no. So nobody can see the reflection statements but you. Those are all private. And unless you do want to bring it up on a meeting, all those reflections are completely private to you. Okay. So if you want to integrate your calendar, maybe Jason, if you can just share the article on calendar integration in the chat while I keep moving forward. There is in the Help Center, there is an article about that can help you integrate your calendar. Okay, you also want to make sure that you're sharing the purpose of or your why of using Cloverleaf Insights. So if you're the person who's orienting or a manager is orienting, they should also be using Cloverleaf, right? So it's important that you share why, or the person shares how they've used it in the past or how it's influenced them in the past. So for example, I was just working with someone who is in information technology, and this person shared how they got the tip about how it talks about how they're really good at training and at sharing knowledge. And the person was like, you know what, I'm going to actually reach out to a few people to see if they need support on this new feature that we just incorporated in our team, right? So it actually prompted an action for her, right? It prompted her to actually take an action and offer help, right? So if someone else has had experiences where a tip or an insight has actually had them take action, you want to share that with the person, right? To share the purpose or your why of using Cloverleaf Insights. And that also, it helps you get a little bit more centered and engaged with the tool as well, or whoever is managing the onboarding. You want to invite the individual to download any applicable reports. So not every assessment has reports, but for all the assessments that do have reports, you want to invite them to download them and possibly just jot down at least 3 interesting insights that they might share with their manager. Hey, this is a strength of mine. I'm not sure that you know it because I'm new, so I want to share it with you. It came up in my Enneagram or it came up in my disc or whatever it is, right? So it's good sort of conversation fodder as you're getting to know your manager, they're getting to know your work style. And again, if you want to know how to download assessment reports, Jason has put the integration of calendar and how to download your assessments all into the meeting chat. So if you need that, you can get that. So again, this is just week 1, right? So far. So if you have a question and you want to ask it in the chat, or if you would like to speak, I'm happy to have you speak. If you want to raise your hand, click the raise your hand. Is there any questions, anything that you're seeing or that you want to even add to what we are talking about in week 1? You can share in the chat, or if you want to speak, you can raise your hand and we'll invite you to unmute. Any questions? Right. Well, if you do have any, please pop them in the chat like you've been doing in the flow of the conversation. So now we're going to get to weeks 2 and 3. And again, this is all outlines in your resource here. So we're going to get to weeks 2 and 3. By now, people have probably had some meet and greets. By now, you've had some conversations. You have maybe met people on your team. Even if you're virtual, you've probably been at least one team meeting, right? So, you want to just basically, again, dive in to help people use the tool a little bit more. Anita brings up a great point. Sometimes Cloverleaf can seem somewhat overwhelming. How do you just drum down to the basics? Here's what I would do if that's the case. Just stick to the dashboard. If you don't want to go after you take the assessments, take the assessments. Just use the functionality. Like, don't worry about figuring out every assessment, figuring out every score. Don't worry about getting too academic. If it's just the basics, it's looking at your dashboard. It's looking at your email, right? So after you take the assessments, again, that's just the gas that you put in the car, right? That's not really what makes Cloverleaf amazing. It's just what fuels all the functionality of Cloverleaf. So if you have to stick to basics, stick to the dashboard. Hey, if you do nothing else, log into the dashboard every morning to center your day, right? That's what I do as a learning professional. I log in, I do my daily coaching, I do what I have to do. It's 2 minutes of learning for myself. So after they take the assessments, kind of just stick to the dashboard, my dashboard. So in weeks 2 and 3, by this point, again, the purpose here is focusing a little bit on team awareness. Now, why this is important is because more and more teams are virtual, hybrid, and dispersed. And, we're not always sitting in the same room with people. We're on screens with people. And it can be very intimidating, right, to join a new team of people. No matter what stage of life you're in, no matter what stage of your career that you're in, you get thrown into a group of strangers. That's intimidating, right? Having Cloverleaf as a little bit of a guide can help you sort of understand, right? Someone all of a sudden may be, acting a certain way and you're like, why are they doing that, right? I can read a little bit more in their Cloverleaf. Oh, I understand. They're really focused on the data right now and it's not about me, right? So this is about team awareness. This is about getting acclimated to your team. And it's about exploring the team dashboard. That's why we're not even talking about the team dashboard in week 1, right? If you want to not even talk about the team dashboard until you get to week 3, that's fine, right? Because we're trying to stage it out. We're just focusing on you and yourself as an individual. Now we're moving on to team awareness. So if people want to explore the team dashboard, Again, there's a lot of features on the team dashboard that are valuable, but if you want to simplify it, I would say stick to the thinking styles comparisons during onboarding. So I'm going to go back on Cloverleaf. I'm going to go to my teams here. And one of the most valuable pieces of Cloverleaf for a person who's new to an organization is the thinking styles comparison. So I can bring up my 16 types, I can bring up my disc, I can bring up myself, right? And Lane, and I could automatically see where we're similar. I can say, okay, I have to work a lot with Lane and I'm brand new and Lane's on the West Coast and I'm on the East Coast. I'm probably never going to see Lane but once or twice a year. So I'm going to look at all of our assessments and see, because remember, every assessment's measuring something different, right? I'm going to look at all of our assessments and I'm going to see how we can work together best. I'm going to look at our Enneagram. How can we work together best? So I would stick to, don't worry about decoding every assessment on the team dashboard. Look at all the people that you interact with, look at their thinking styles comparison, see a little bit about how you can collaborate with them, see if you can also understand some of the intention, right, behind some of their behavior, right? This one feature for a new person is probably where you want to hyper focus, right? If you want to go deeper, obviously, into some of the assessments, you can also invite people, they can download the report. You also want to introduce people to like, hey, you know what? You can dive deep into the assessments, but the purpose of Cloverleaf isn't to become an expert in 16 types. The purpose of Cloverleaf is to help every team be a thriving team. But if you do want more information, you can click on that question mark. It's going to take you to a whole bunch of resources about understanding this assessment. You can also click and expand and learn more about all these assessments if you want to, but that can be overwhelming. So that's why I'm just saying focus on the thinking styles for now, right? So again, you want to explore the team dashboard a little bit to understand more relationships, right? You can also talk about further incorporation into one-on-one meetings. So now if I want to be able to incorporate sort of a little bit of knowledge into my meetings and I go back to my team dashboard, right? And I say, okay, I don't want to just learn about Lane here. I want to go and I want to ask some questions and incorporate some of the knowledge that I have about Lane into our communications. So I'm going to try to, let's just say about anybody. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to find her. So let's say it's Tiana, right? That I want to learn even more about, right? And I'm going to have a conversation with Tiana. I'm about to have a meeting with Tiana and we have to collaborate on something. I can actually go to Tiana's profile and I can actually learn a little bit more about Tiana, her communication style, her conflict triggers, right? I can ask a question, right? How can I deliver feedback to Tiana, right? I can ask a question there and I can incorporate this information into my initial communications as I'm getting to know people, right? Now, I don't have to take this all as solid law. I can say like, hey, like I read this on Cloverleaf. I just thought it'd be interesting. We're both really good at this. How can that help us, right? So again, you're able to kind of use this information to influence and incorporate into how you're customizing your communications. And again, remember, especially if you're a virtual team, a dispersed team, a hybrid team, or not somewhere with anybody, there's a lot of downtime in that first 30 days. And wouldn't you rather have people get to know people better rather than just like hang out and not do anything, right? Yeah, so again, this is just an information that you can share with people and help people to incorporate into getting to know people better. You can also have maybe the new hire share some examples. Hey, what did you notice as you were going through Cloverleaf, right? What are some insights that you noticed? Hey, it's this one strength that I learned in a tip, right? I didn't, I don't know if people know this about me, and I want to bring that to the conversation, right? So you also want to share some insights about the manager and the existing team member example. So for example, there's some prompts in the resource. So for example, the manager and the team member, these are questions for the new hire. The new hire could say, hey, I noticed one way we're similar is this. Given that we'll be working together, how can we leverage that similarity? So there are prompts for the new hire to share examples about insights about themselves. And there are prompts for the new hire to share some manager and team member, right, questions for that new hire. So that's all right here. Those prompts are all right here, right? So for example, invite them to bring insights, invite the new hire to bring insights to a one-on-one meeting, right? That might happen. These are some insights that they might bring. So these are some prompts for them. So to not just say, oh, like, what did you learn from Cloverleaf? These are actually some prompts. Hey, you might want to share this, right? Or with your manager, you might want to share that, right? So this is guiding them. It's giving them a talk track of how they can use the information that they're getting, right? So it's beyond taking the assessments, it's now utilizing it to communicate. All right, any questions at all? Any questions at all about any of that? So Mara shared, so yeah, instinctive drives can be a little bit challenging if you get an inconclusive response. So if you are just starting out with a new hire, I think Jason gave you a great example. 16 types, Enneagram, DISC, and VIA are great to start with, right? So instinctive drives is really an outlier that it may prompt people to take it again if it gets inconclusive results. But those 4 are great to start. There are 3 behavioral assessments and there's 1 strengths assessment there. You can also throw in culture pulse as well. And so if you want to start with those 4, if you want to start with 2 or 3, that's fine too. Most people are most familiar with 16 types and DISC. And so people will have an easier time just correlating some of that information. Remember, the value is not in the actual assessment. It's what Cloverleaf will now do with that assessment. I wouldn't recommend only taking 1 assessment. Why? Is because the more assessments you take, the more varied coaching tips that you will get. So every time you take a new assessment, you get a new batch of coaching tips. And so you don't want them to be so narrow, like just DISC related, just 16 types related. So I would say do at least 3 assessments, right? And just, again, you can tell them, hey, just do 1 each day or whatever it is for that first week. But great question. Mara asked about if there are some assessments to avoid for new hires. If you have any other questions, just pop them in. Myself or Jason will address them. So when we get to week 4, you're now kind of, the person's been there 30 days. They probably don't know their job super well, but they probably have a little bit of an idea of the lay of the land. So the purpose here is to have ongoing development fueled by Cloverleaf. You want people to use the tool, right, beyond that 30 days, right? So you might want to share some best practices. So for example, you might want to share, it's not just about the emails, right? That there's ongoing self-development review with the use of the daily coaching feature, right? So I always tell people to use the daily coaching feature, right? As much as possible. I'm going to go to my dashboard. If you can use that daily coaching feature and you can use that as a way to start your day, obviously I've already done it, but it's kind of a little bit hidden over here. It's the hidden gem of Cloverleaf. If people use that, it becomes really a way to center yourself and get intentional about your day. So that's the first thing you might want to explain. It's not just the emails. There's ongoing self-development review with the use of the daily coaching feature, the meeting prep with the calendar integration, right? So you want to, if you're able to do calendar integration in your organization, you want to make sure that people can see, like, I have a meeting coming up with a few folks, right? And I have some information about how I can prepare for that meeting. Imagine being new and not knowing Andrew, Evan, or Jason, and being able to understand a little bit more about how they operate. I mean, that's going to just give me a little bit of a sigh of relief, right? Think of this, the service that it is to a new hire to have this information before going into a meeting with a bunch of strangers or people that they've just met a few weeks ago. So the meeting preparation with calendar integration, collaboration and communication challenges. So the first thing I always tell learning leaders is that if someone comes to you with a problem and you have Cloverleaf, I'm going to ask them, did you go to your Cloverleaf dashboard and see where someone clashes, right? So you go to the manager, you expect them to solve it, really, but it's really, you have this tool that actually helps you to learn to be able to solve it. So using Cloverleaf for collaboration and communication challenges, actually to help you prepare for performance conversations, right? So if I'm going to my own profile and I want to prepare for my conversation with my manager, I can actually say, like, how can I share my strengths with my manager? Sometimes people have a hard time talking about themselves. right? I want to be able to talk about my strengths with my manager, right? I want to prepare for that conversation, right? And so I can actually go, right, and I can understand a little bit how to approach that conversation. I can also get language about myself from my assessments, from these insights, to be able to speak to my strengths. People have a hard time saying what they're great at, right? So I can get language from here as I go into my performance conversation. Again, you're just sharing some best practices. Here's how going forward you want to be able to utilize Cloverleaf. Also, goal setting. If there are strengths on your strengths and abilities and talents that you have that you have a hard time expressing and you want to incorporate that into a goal, Cloverleaf can also source some of that language. Hey, I have this ability to really manage other people in a way through a project that's really effective, right? And I want to be able to do that more in my role, right? How can I set a goal of maybe leading a project this quarter or this year, right? And so again, it's just Cloverleaf isn't rocket science. It just reminds you what you already know about yourself, but that if you didn't have it in front of your face, you would forget, right? And so it allows you to advocate for yourself, to speak to your strengths, to speak, to some of the areas that you want to grow by just reminding you, giving you that language, that prompt to remind you. And so again, this in week 4, you're just helping people learn, how do I use Cloverleaf going forward? How can it assist me? And the reason why I highlight the daily coaching so much is that it's a form of microlearning. So what is microlearning, right? Microlearning is learning in short bursts over time rather than me sending you to a 4-day workshop, right? There's a lot of research around that you come out of that 4-day workshop, you're not going to retain a whole lot that's going to be actionable, right? Because it's all squished into one. But if I give you little pieces of information over time, you're more apt to apply it. And so on the far right side of the microlearning spectrum is a self-paced or virtual instructor-led course training. It might be an hour, it might be 90 minutes, it might be, again, it could be virtual, it could be a self-paced thing that I go on and I do myself, it's a video, or it could be like a webinar like I'm leading you right now. It could be 20 to 60 minutes. In the middle of that spectrum is a self-paced learning that's maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Those are those trainings where you drag and drop and you answer a bunch of questions, and you're done. You get a check mark. I'm done with that training. And then you have automated coaching, which is the daily coaching feature, which is 3 to 5 minutes of time. It's actually less than 3 minutes, but I'm giving it 3 to 5 minutes. And that's that daily coaching. And those are those reflections. So this is the smallest commitment of micro learning that you were asking for people to give. And don't we want people who are actively developing themselves on a regular basis to be part of our organization, right? Just taking the most successful people have rituals that they do every single day to help center them, to help give them intention. Like there's a focus and a centering. And that's what this micro learning piece of Cloverleaf can give you. And you want to encourage new hires to take that on, to own their development, to own their personal self career development in your organization, right? And you're giving them a tool that's helping them do that. So again, I know I've gave you a lot of information. I want to invite you to share some of your onboarding best practices. It can incorporate Cloverleaf or it can be something else. If you'd like to speak, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to raise your hand, we'd love to hear from you. And we'd love to be able to exchange information so people can hear some best practices. So if you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand, or if you want to share a best practice in the chat, you can do this. But what are those best practices that you're either using Cloverleaf for in onboarding, or that you're just doing an onboarding that's working? We're doing this thing when new hires come in and it's working. People need ideas. They want ideas. We want these webinars to also be an opportunity for you to share information. So I'll give you a moment to share your best practices.
I can share one while
Sure,
we wait.
sure.
I think it's often overlooked But for something that helps people like me during the onboarding process of learning a new job or a new role, new skill, etc., um, something I truly appreciate about learning a new process is the context behind the process. It helps really solidify why I'm doing something the way that it should be done. That speaks to the experience of those that have been doing it before me, that have really come up with an efficient way of doing it and are passing it along to those new hires. So I think context is really, really important.
Yes, the why of doing things, right?
Yeah.
Anita said yes. Right. And that's where, that's also why I shared about sharing the purpose or why of Cloverleaf. It's not just like, here's this other platform that we use, right? You do want people to understand as they come into the organization why you're sharing this tool with them and how it can support them in the same way that you want people to understand why of their some of the tasks that are included in their role. Anyone else want to share anything? Well, if you do still want to share, please take the time to do that. We're going to move forward just to give you a few more things for your toolbox. If you have not yet seen it, we have something called the Cloverleaf 30-Day Challenge. And so Jason's going to share that link in the chat. So this is a great New Year team activity. And the 30-day challenge is basically a commitment of a team where they're going to actually interact with Cloverleaf every day, Monday through Friday, for 30 days. And there's actually a little bit of a guide here of how to do it, right? And so it's basically using that daily coaching feature on a regular basis and utilizing tip saving and sharing and reflections to do it. So it's basically, I'm going to commit to logging on to Cloverleaf for 2 minutes every day. Now, let's say it only winds up happening 3 days a week. Great. So it's the continued use. Cloverleaf is your self-development gym, right? It's that every day spending a couple of minutes. So and at the end of the month, there's a debrief with questions that the team can reflect on about the impact of having that exercise, of taking that time to know myself and my team a little better. So this is about creating Cloverleaf as a habit. If this is something you might want to use or amend, it is in the chat. It's a wonderful way, again, to build that habit of people using Cloverleaf for what it's designed for, again, which is to help teams become thriving teams, right? So if that's something you're interested in, we have popped that in the chat. We also have someone shared some best practice. Before I started in October, they had me take my Gallup strengths test, and then my company had a 3-week schedule arranged for me with meetings scheduled where I sat with each manager to learn about their role and their functional space before I really jumped into my position fully. Excellent. So it sounds like you had a lot of relationship building before you started getting tactical, which is awesome, and actually something that a lot of what we're talking about here